Monday. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Flo. If you are new here, I'm Lauryn Moore, a functional nutrition practitioner, and I'm super excited to come to you guys today. I have a brand new series that I want to dive into, mostly because I've been getting lots of amazing questions and conversations all around the thyroid. Last month, we talked a lot about fertility health, fertility awareness, and kind of dipping our toes into this world of hormones and starting to learn very, very quickly that the hormones are actually just a symptom of some of the deeper dysfunction and some of the questions that we aren't really asking, or the supportive measures that we aren't getting access to when it comes to our hormones, are some of those deeper dive understandings, right? And I think the thyroid is definitely another one of those areas, especially in women's health, where we're starting to see some really basic surface level treatment or understanding of the thyroid, but it's not really getting very many women anywhere because the thyroid is actually just a symptom, right? It's a symptom of some deeper dysfunction. So here we are, we're running around with our heads cut off. There's over 20 million Americans that are getting medicated for their thyroid health. And this is not anti-pharmaceuticals at all. If you guys have been around, you know that I am not anti-pharmaceuticals. I'm all about an integrative approach. But what I am anti is I'm anti-uninformed consent, right? That is what I am anti. So I am a big, passionate believer in education. And I think that all of us deserve to know what's going on with our body. And I also am a firm believer that you really don't need a PhD to understand your body, especially when you start to look at the big picture. You start to look at the interweb of how things are connected. And the thyroid tends to be at the epicenter of where a lot of symptomology shows up, especially for women. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the thyroid is to blame. It doesn't necessarily mean that the thyroid is the sole culprit. And if we start to treat it that way, we tend to leave a lot of opportunity on the table for us to actually feel better. I can't even tell you, out of the 20 million Americans that are being medicated for their thyroid issues today, there are many individuals who don't actually feel any better or don't feel any different implementing the thyroid medication. So we know that that's not it, right? And we also know that in the world of functional and conventional medicine, we understand that using something like medication can be a great bridge solution, but ultimately it's like, as long as you take the medication, like your numbers look in a good spot, you don't feel great, but your doctor keeps saying like, oh, your numbers are fine. We don't need to adjust your medication or try a new medication. Everything looks great. And you're like, they're just treating a number on a lab versus treating you as the human behind the lab who is having a very lived experience of being on thyroid medication, but maybe not feeling the 100% like exactly the way that people feel like they should be. That you just maybe feel like you're surviving on a day-to-day basis, not truly thriving. And that's what I'm all about, is taking that deeper understanding and saying like, ooh, okay, we noticed that the thyroid was dysfunctional. We noticed that based off of our symptoms, we were having some thyroid imbalances. We brought in like a really cute start, right? And it's like, the cute start is like, oh, here's some levothyroxine, here's some synthroid, right? Maybe in the more advanced sense, it's like, let's throw some cytomel into the equation. And it's like, we can throw everything in the kitchen sink at the thyroid, but what if we're looking at it all wrong? What if the thyroid actually isn't the villain in this picture? What if the thyroid is actually the victim? And that's what I want to bring you guys today, is a little bit more of a broader sense understanding of like, what does the thyroid even do? What are its functions in the body? And when we start to understand that, we can start to understand how when the thyroid starts to become dysfunctional, when labs start to look a little funky, when TSH starts to rise through the roof, or we start to hear terms like Hashimoto's disease, we have to understand it's like, oh, okay, so when the thyroid starts to act up, we need to look deeper. We need to ask the question of why. Why is the thyroid acting up? Because it's not likely the villain. It's more the victim in this situation. And so sometimes just having thyroid medication and getting sent on our way and being told our labs are normal, like it ain't it, right? Like that's just like a really cute surface level start. And I feel very passionate that people deserve more, right? And I think we can handle more because we just want to know what's up, right? We want to know, how does our body work? We want to know how are all these things fitting together so that we can make those changes necessary to really move from surviving to truly thriving, right? So that's what I'm all about at the lowdown. And so when the lowdown and the lowdown methods that I have developed, when I talk about Thyroid dysfunction, thyroid patterns. What are we really looking at? What are we talking about? So let's just start. Number one, high level. What does the thyroid actually do? Okay. I think a lot of times we hear about it, especially in relation to weight loss. I would say is a very common one. You kind of go back a little bit to maybe more of the baby boomer generation where thyroid was really becoming more popularized on the scene of recognizing how, especially for females, the thyroid got the brunt of the blame for weight changes, right? And don't get me wrong, the thyroid absolutely being that master metabolic gland in our body, it absolutely regulates things like overall metabolic rate, and that can impact our overall body composition. But it does so much more than that. So to like think that it's so linear of like, oh, I'm gaining weight rapidly, or I don't feel or look the way that I want to feel in my body, it must be my thyroid. It's like, that's a very oversimplistic, unfortunately, and kind of a reductionist way to think that we're going to practice medicine. It's like the human body kind of just laughs at us in that situation. It's like, no. I'm trying to get your attention to something bigger, right? So let's really take a look at like, what is the thyroid? What does it do? So if you're unfamiliar with anatomy, that's totally fine. Wouldn't expect anybody to know where your thyroid is at. But your thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland, and it sits right here in the middle of the neck, right? It's kind of like this little command center that's tucked back right behind our trachea, right behind our collarbones here. So even though it's small, it has one of the biggest jobs in the human body, and that is to really act as a thermostat. Right? So you think about the thermostat on the wall, like the room's a little bit too cold, so we want to heat it up, or the room's a little bit too hot, so we want to cool it down. That's exactly what the thyroid is doing within the grander scheme of our entire metabolic rate, right? Things are a little bit too fast, let's slow that puppy down, or things are a little bit too slow, let's try to speed that puppy up, right? So with that metabolic thermostat, you can realize that the thyroid is always on the lookout, right? It's always looking at and sensing like, how's the room? How's the temperature? How's the humidity? How's everybody doing, right? So the thyroid's always looking out, right? It's kind of like, I need to adjust the temperature of the room based off of what everybody is telling me to do, right? So it's getting inputs from the brain, it's getting inputs from the adrenal glands, it's getting inputs from the ovaries or the testes or the gut, right? So everybody is talking to the thyroid gland and is telling it, hey, do we need to heat things up? Do we need to cool things down? So that's why we call the thyroid the master metabolic gland, sitting right here at the base of the neck. So that means that it's not just responsible for our body weight, it's responsible for regulating how fast or how slow literally every single cell of your body works, okay? So yes, it can control things like overall metabolic rate, like how many calories are we utilizing at rest, but also things like energy, mood. You think about how fast or how slow anything goes. You think about like digestive motility, right? So a lot of times when you have thyroid dysfunction, especially hypo or low thyroid function, you see a lot of constipation, right? So everything's just slow and it's slowed down. Or low thyroid function can be related to like low mood, low energy, right? So all of these things, it's like, oh, okay. So once I realize that the thyroid is this master metabolic thermostat and its job is to literally speed things up or heat things up or cool things down or slow things down, all it's doing is what it's being told, okay? So if we don't like what it's doing, we need to give it different inputs, right? And it's like, oh, no, I don't want you to slow things down. Then we can't be putting in inputs that create the heat, right? It's like, ooh, the thyroid's like cooling down and slowing things down. And we wonder why it does that when we're out here like putting in all the things that like bring the heat, right? It's like chronic cardio, excessive dieting, like appetite suppressants. And it's like all stress and like all these things that bring the heat. And then we like act surprised when the thyroid's trying to cool things down or slow things down. It's like, no, don't do that. And it's like, no, we need to then look at the different inputs. If we're not super happy with how the thermostat's responding, maybe we need to look at the different inputs, okay? So from the brain, digestion, mood, our menstrual cycles, our skin, our heartbeat, our body temperature, literally everything is controlled by the metabolic thermostat of the thyroid. So knowing this, how does the thyroid do that, right? There's some basic thyroid physiology that I want you guys to know, mostly because this is going to translate then into what labs you should ask for and what labs you should be requesting. to really denote what I would consider like a full thyroid workup, not just, like I said, like a cute little start to a thyroid workup, but like, let's go, let's really look at what's happening under the hood here. So the thyroid does this master metabolic thermostat job by producing specifically two hormones. We have T3, and T3 is inactive, right, until it's activated into T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone. So we have T4, we have T3. These are two hormones that are produced by the thyroid gland. Most of what our thyroid produces is T4. About 70% of it is going to be T4. The other 30% is T3. So we have 70% that we produce that's not even active. And the moment that we produce it, our body has to be able to convert it in order to make it active, okay? So T4 and T3, these are like little messengers that go out into the body. T4, like I said, is inactive. So it's kind of like the storage form of thyroid hormone, whereas T3 is the one that actually gets shit done, right? It is the active form. It's what our body can use right away. It doesn't have to pull it from storage and figure out how to convert it into an active state. It just becomes like ready to rock and roll, right? I kind of relate it. The analogy I like to use is like a toy that needs batteries, right? It's like, we got plenty of toys in the toy box that are just sitting there ready and waiting to be used, but they don't have any batteries in them. And so when we want to use them or play with them, it's like we have to pull the toy out of the toy box, put the battery in, and it's like, now I'm ready. Now let's rock, right? So it's like T4 is kind of like all the toys without batteries, and T3 is like the toys with batteries. Let's go, okay? So this is where it kind of gets interesting, because T4, it can get converted into T3. Like I said, we can put batteries in T4 and make it T3. Most of that conversion happens outside the thyroid, right? It's like we're producing T4 and T3, but that activation has to happen in your liver, in your gut, even in your brain tissue. That thyroid conversion happens. So if your thyroid's making enough T4, but we're not converting it properly, you're going to feel all of the same, like downstream, everything's cooling down, everything's slowing down. You're going to feel like garbage, okay? And this is exactly why just checking just a TSH panel, or even just a TSH and a free T4 panel, that is like, it's kind of meaningless. It doesn't even tell us the whole story. I can't tell you how many individuals have had a T4 and a T3 that look relatively normal. We add the T3 into the equation, or like a more comprehensive thyroid panel, and we can really see, like, is thyroid part of this series or not? We have to really be able to look at the full story. So a lot of times, why would the thyroid struggle? Why would the thyroid either struggle to produce enough thyroid hormones, enough toys, or why would the thyroid hormones struggle in converting some of these? A lot of times it's very, very highly sensitive, like I said, to what is going on around it. It is constantly getting inputs from every single gland and cell of the entire body of like, am I speeding up or am I slowing down? So imagine you yourself, right? We live in a human experience all the time. Like, we can easily get very overstimulated, right? There's too many people talking. There's too many notifications coming in. There's too many pings. There's too many people that are like, take a left. And it's like, no, take a right. No, eat carbs. It's like, no, don't eat carbs. It's like, we get these overstimulating kind of like mixed signals all the time. But imagine that being the thyroid hormone, and it's getting all of these notifications and messages from other systems of the body telling it like, I'm stressed. I'm depleted. I feel inflamed today. It's like, all of these different inputs are coming in really hot and really strong to the thyroid, and it has to decipher all of these and decide, like, what do I do? Am I supposed to be cooling down and slowing down, or am I supposed to be speeding up and heating things up, right? That is like the perfect balance of our overall energetic equation. It's like, am I supposed to be giving the system more energy and feeling like light and vibrant and awake and thriving? Or am I supposed to be slowing things down and making her like want to go to bed, want to lay around all day, low mood, low motivation, low energy expenditure, right? That's what the thyroid has to decide. So we're getting all of these inputs, right? So if we don't like how the thermostat's responding, we have to look at the inputs. A lot of the inputs that are going to cause the thyroid to slow down or cool down would be chronic dieting, under eating, emotional trauma, nervous system regulation, blood sugar crashes. Yeah, that one's a big one. Gut inflammation or gut infections, leaky gut, exposure to toxins, hormone shifts, like hormone shifts that happen with either like perimenopause or coming on or off birth control, or hormone shifts that happen postpartum, that was the word I was looking for, or even like autoimmune triggers, right? So all of these are sending signals to the thyroid saying like, hey, it's not safe out here. Things are wild, like slow down. We need to slow everything down. We need to conserve energy at all costs. So your thyroid on paper and how you feel, it looks sluggish, right? It's like we get diagnosed with subclinical hypothyroidism. It's not because the thyroid is broken. There's nothing wrong with the thyroid itself. It's doing exactly what the body is telling it to do. It's operating in a very healthy way. It is down regulating just like we want it to, but because it's trying to protect you. But what do? We try to intervene from like a conventional and a traditional medicine standpoint. And it's like the thyroid is already like trying to slow things down, conserve energy, and we just kick it. And here's some thyroid hormone, here's some cytomel, here's some levothyroxine, here's some synthroid, like, let's go. And the thyroid's like, no, I'm like slowing down for a reason. So like, why are you like stepping on the gas, right? With the parking brake on, right? We're just revving the engine at that point in time. And it's like fumes are flying and nobody is happy. And the thyroid's like, yeah, I have the parking brake on for a reason. You can try to press the accelerator all you want, but like, we're not going anywhere until you can help me release this parking brake, right? So all of the analogies aside, I want you guys to just recognize that when you kind of understand how the thyroid actually works, you recognize that it's getting all of these inputs into its thermostat, and then it is responding based off of what that thermostat actually needs. So anything that we're seeing show up in thyroid labs, that is just a symptom. So don't look there in terms of like the thyroid is to blame. What's to blame are the inputs. We have to go back out to those inputs and figure out, okay, what is the thyroid responding to? Why does it feel like it needs to slow down or cool everything down? So know that, like I said, our thyroid is much more than just body composition. It is about energy. It's the master regulator of overall body rhythm, timing, vitality. So if you're struggling, it's not that your body is failing you by any means. It's your body trying to protect you again. So the thyroid is not the villain. It is the victim in this situation, right? So when we kind of think about what does it feel like to have some of those like slow down, cool down moments, it's usually you feel exhausted, your hair feels like it's thinning, you feel more puffy and inflamed, or maybe if you're a female, your menstrual cycles are all over the place, you feel cold all the time, you're anxious, you have brain fog. It's like, then you go in thinking like, surely there is something wrong with me. I just feel like a shell of a human being. And you go in and you're told your labs are normal, right? Probably because they just ran a TSH. Maybe they ran a T4, but even then you leave feeling like, am I crazy? Am I hopeless here? And it's like a lot of times just recognizing, no, the real truth is your symptoms are very real and the labs were incomplete. Okay. And so the conventional model of thyroid testing is maybe just test a TSH. Maybe if you're lucky, they might grab a T4, but that's like reading one sentence of an entire chapter book and expecting to like get the whole plot and get the whole picture. Right. And so honestly, a lot of times it's just ran that way because to them, it doesn't change the intervention. Right. So you have to recognize that from more of a conventional or traditional aspect. To them, it's very black and white. It's either you need thyroid meds or you don't. And it's like there's no gray area in between for them. It's like if you don't need thyroid meds, then they can't help you. Versus really, it's very nuanced and a lot of gray area in there of like, what are all the inputs? What can we do to help the thyroid release some of those parking brakes besides just trying to like rev the engine of something that it's obviously doing for a reason? So this is where we need a much bigger picture. So a full thyroid panel that I run on all of my patients, anybody that comes in and does a functional wellness consult with me and gets initial labs, you're going to get TSH free T4, free T3. We can even look at thyroid antibodies. We can even toss on, like I said, a reverse T3. Sometimes it's even helpful for individuals to look at some of those key nutrient factors too. What are your B vitamins doing? What about selenium? What about zinc? What about iron? Like all of these things are going to be part of that equation. So we can't just look at the thyroid itself. We have to look at the entire terrain, because that is what's telling the thyroid what to do ultimately. Okay. So if we're not happy with what the thyroid is doing, don't blame the thyroid. The thyroid is not the villain in this situation. The thyroid is the victim. So we have to look at, like I said, gut health, nervous system, inflammation, blood sugar, hormone balance. It's like that's the real context here that is going to shape thyroid expression. So just know that if you are part of the 20 million Americans that are being medicated or treated for thyroid conditions, like you are not crazy, you are not lazy, you're not just like aging poorly, right? It's like you are navigating kind of a system that has misunderstood the thyroid and has kind of done a big disservice to overall physiology, specifically female physiology and understanding the thyroid. So we really, at the lowdown, I always want to look at how the lowdown methods are very different. We're going to look, like I said, at the total body system, right? The thyroid just being one of those components, knowing that the thyroid is just receiving messages from all these other areas of adrenal health and blood sugar balance, gut, immune system, detoxification. They're all working as a symphony together. Can we use advanced testing? Yes, obviously we can to get a better diagnostic picture, but we also use your symptoms because those are really sacred data for us as well too. It's not just going and searching for something that's wrong. We're really asking why. And then we want to really walk through what are those patterns and how medicine really should be in my experience and in my opinion. So if you're wondering kind of like, where do I go from here? Number one, stop believing that just because your normal labs come back normal, that there's nothing wrong. Okay. They were probably just incomplete. Your symptoms are just as sacred and valuable data as lab work. But your fatigue or hair loss, mental fog, weight struggles, like those are very, very real. And there is more that can be done. You just need someone who, one, will run all of the right testing for you, and two, really talk to you about the nuance of the gray area of all of the different things that we can do to really support an underfunctioning thyroid that's not just revving the accelerator on a system that obviously has the parking brake on for a reason, right? We need to realize, why is the parking brake on? Why and how can we release that parking brake and get everything running smoothly again? So if you're curious about that process, I would start with my functional wellness consult together. That will give us an opportunity to really run some comprehensive labs. We get a full 60-minute appointment together to really discuss those results, come up with a game plan of how we want to really take a look at more of a comprehensive root cause view of overall thyroid dysfunction. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for staying in line with some of my crazy analogies. I always like to use some of those analogies because I think it just helps us put some of more real world examples to some of these arbitrary processes in our body that are happening. But trust that, like I said, you don't need a PhD to understand your body, but you do need, like I said, a little bit more insight than maybe just like thyroid meds or not thyroid meds. That's kind of, like I said, a very reductionist and kind of acute start. But really, what are we looking at when someone has more thyroid dysfunction, and how can we help them more comprehensively? So that's my jam. That's my game. The lowdown methods. We're here for you. Click the link in my bio and we can get scheduled. So we'll see you guys next week.